Hello and welcome everybody, and thank you for joining me again. My name is Wilky and we're here with another Battlerite Champion Spotlight. Today we're gonna look at Rook, the Hungering Berserker. Now this is where my knowledge gets a bit dated because somebody told me, pardon, that the Glutton that is from BLC got reworked a while ago, or probably 2 to 3 years ago, I'm not entirely sure when, and that his new skill set is pretty much identical to Rook. So if you played BLC and you know the new Glutton, apparently this is it. But like I said, this is where my knowledge gets a bit dated, so don't nail me on this one. Anyways, we're just gonna take a look at his abilities. Now his first ability is called Pummel, striking the enemy for 10 damage. Successful hits will charge your weapon, and that'll increase the damage of Crushing Blow, which is your right click. So basically your left click is gonna look like that. And for now you have a maximum of 3 charges. As I said in the serious spotlight, that it'll display usually as Roman numbers, and if you have some perks or Battlerites that increase that capacity up to 4, you'll actually see a Roman 4 being written there. So this is actually Roman numbers and not just stripes or anything. Anyways, like I said, 10 damage, nothing too significant, but pretty damn annoying, and it charges your right click. Your right click is Crushing Blow. Slams your hammer into the ground, dealing 14 damage plus 2 per charge. So currently at a max of 3 charges, it'll deal 20 damage. And it'll apply Armor Break if you have full charges, which then increases the damage targets take by 20% for 4 seconds. So pretty damn good. Pretty good radius, relatively good casting time for a relatively good ability. And yeah, I think this one is probably the bread and butter skill of Rook. And this one helps him pretty much squish enemies relatively easy because this 20% increased damage actually is quite noticeable. And you want to make sure you don't trade blows with him if you have that debuff up. His spacebar is Rush. Now Rush deals damage depending on how far you traveled, and it also stuns the enemy for 0.5 seconds, my bad. Oops, that was his ultimate. His spacebar looks like this. You can actually see that he's charging for roughly, I guess, half a second or maybe a bit longer. 0.7 seconds. And yeah, at max distance it'll deal 24 damage. But actually reaching max distance is kind of tricky, because you'd literally have to be pretty much outside of that arrow range. So I don't really recommend always going for the max damage, because the stun usually helps quite a bit, and it still deals a considerable amount of damage even at lower range. Now for his Q, this is a counter, so we have to go to the shooting guy. Let's go to this one down there. And what it does is it'll turn you invulnerable, and after that, or even during that, I think, you'll be in a state of Berserk if I'm not mistaken. Right, so what Berserk does is increases attack speed, movement speed, and invulnerable. Okay, so basically Berserk gives me attack speed and movement speed, and I also am 1 second completely invulnerable while countering properly. So this basically makes you go ham, and is a very scary tool because of that 1 second invulnerability, and that Berserk buff afterwards is quite intimidating, so you definitely don't want to trade blows if you trigger that as well. Now for his E ability is Boulder Toss. It's a pretty long range skill that deals pretty good damage and also has a relatively large knockback, so make sure that if you see that coming, or if you want to use this, that this can be used to disposition or even split up enemies quite well. Anyways, this is pretty much all about his basic abilities, so let's take a look at his axe. His first axe ability is his left click, which is Eat, which is something very familiar for the Glutton players, which basically heals him for 16 health and then 24 health over 4 seconds, which is gonna look like this. It's a pretty good self-heal at the cost of 25 energy, which is I think pretty good. His second X ability is Meat Bolt, which deals 24 damage and then snares the enemy for 50% for 2 seconds, which is a pretty nasty slow, which is gonna look like this, where he's basically flinging his meat right into your face. So this slow is actually pretty damn good, and if you ever get hit by that, boy, it's kind of hard to get away after that. His third axe ability is called Smack, where he hits you again with his meat, as you can see here, dealing 12 damage, as well as knocking you back. If you get knocked back into a wall, and I think even into an enemy? No, only a wall, I guess. Okay. So it's unlike other skills, so you do actually have to hit a wall with that. But if you manage to knock an enemy into a wall, they will be incapacitated for 3 seconds. Similar to Eva's Incapacitate, any damage will then wake them up again. But this can be used quite well to disposition enemies and incapacitate them for a relatively long duration. Now for his ultimate, Tremor is insanely damaging, however it has a relatively long casting time, and it's looking like this. You can totally re-aim, but only during his jump. So if I use it, you can see that he doesn't really turn, even though I fling my mouse around. The only time he turns around is when he jumps in midair. But as I said, really good amount of damage, very decent range, and a very scary thing. However, due to a relatively long casting animation, very susceptible to CCs, disables, and kinda easy to avoid, so you definitely want to make sure that if you use that the enemy is maybe even slowed by your teammates, or preferably even stunned. Anyways, this is pretty much all about Rook's skill set. Hopefully you guys enjoyed another champion spotlight for Battlerite, and as always, let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and yeah, as always, see ya!